Namaste and welcome to this class called the Rainbow Coloured Python. But before I begin, I offer my obeisances to my spiritual master, Jagat Guru Siddhaswarupananda. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsariti Namane Bhaj Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Adwaita and Gadha Shri Vasudev Gobhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, you know, when there's a children's party on, maybe a birthday party or whatever, but the mums and the dads who are putting on the party, they always arrange for some games to be played at the party. Children love games. So one of those games, and I don't know if they still play them, one of those games is called Pin the Tail on the Donkey. And in this game, one of the child, he's blindfolded and then he's given the tail of a donkey in his hand with a little pin on it. And then all the other kids turn him around. They spin him around and around so he's completely disorientated. And then they turn him in the direction where there's a chart on the wall where there's a donkey on the chart without a tail. And then he's got to step forward very tentatively and go up till he reaches the wall and then pin the tail where he thinks it should be on the donkey. And often there's quite humorous results with, you know, he pins it on the donkey's stomach or he pins it up in the air. So this is the game, Pin the Tail on the Donkey. So in reality though, just like that blindfolded child in this game, he's actually relying on his memory. He was memorizing where was the tail supposed to be, you know, before he was blindfolded. He's relying on his sense of direction to try and do this right so the other kids don't laugh. But we here in this material world, that's what a lot of people, that's what a lot of us are doing. We're relying upon our senses, which are very fallible. We're relying on our intelligence, which is limited. Even when you're Einstein, it's still limited. We rely on our viewpoint of what we think the reality of things are. And always this ends with disastrous results. So the other day, I read a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam about the devotee who is fully surrendered to the Lord. And the devotee doesn't rely on his faulty material senses and so on. He just relies on Krishna. He uses his intelligence, he uses his senses, but he is fully dependent on Krishna. So he's not like a blindfolded person in the material world who's following another blind person, who's following another blind person. Does that sound like social media to you? I think so. So the devotee holds on to Krishna through thick and thin. And even when he might be in a dark, blindfolded situation where he doesn't know what's going to happen, where he's about to go, still he relies on Krishna and he never stumbles and falls. That's what really drew my attention to this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So here it is, we'll put it up on screen. O King, one who accepts this process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead will never blunder on his path in this world. Even while running with eyes closed, he will never trip or fall. Amazing verse. So the Krishna story for today, it's all about the cowherd boys in Vrindavan who were completely confident that Krishna would protect them, even when they were running headlong into the darkness of a demon's mouth. So 5,000 years ago, there were quite a number of demoniac kings on this planet, Kamsa, Jarasandha, and many others. They were politically and physically very strong and dangerous kings, but they didn't have mystic powers necessarily. But a lot of their associates had mystic powers, and they would help Jarasandha or help Kamsa to achieve something. Basically, Kamsa was hoping that a lot of these friends of his, really won't call them friends, associates, using their mystic abilities would kill Krishna. So what really comes to mind straight away is three siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. They all had mystic abilities, and they all had dark hearts. So the sister, Putana loved ugliness. She was attracted to ugliness. But when she went to the village of Gokula, she changed her form, completely changed her form. I don't mean she just put a bit of makeup on and did her hair differently. She had the ability to completely change her form, and she appeared to be a beautiful woman because she thought, it will be easier now for me to gain access into the inner chambers of Nanda Maharaja's palace and get in there to that child. People will trust me. Of course, we know it didn't work, did it? Now, her brother, Baka, when he set out to kill little boy Krishna, he changed his human shape into that of a gigantic bird, like a heron, a huge bird with a huge beak. And he was going to try and use this beak to kill Krishna. But of course, we know that didn't work either. So it's the other brother that is going to be part of today's story. The other brother who had mystical abilities to change his shape. That's part of this story. So let's begin. Ekada. Once upon a time, Kamsa sat on his throne brooding, for news had reached him of Aghasura's death. So every time one of his associates went out to kill Krishna, he was very, very hopeful. But then the news would always come back to him. No, they died. Krishna, little boy Krishna, is still alive. So this is what's happened. So he's sitting on his throne. He's angry. He's disappointed. He's mystified. What's he going to do now to try and kill? I mean, surely it'd be easy to kill a little child. Kamsa's eyes flickered red as he gazed at those around him. So he's in his court, and there's generals there, there's associates, there's soldiers there, and he looks around at all of them. Who can he send out next? Out of the corner of his eye, Kamsa caught a glimpse of Baka's brother and ordered him, "Come here." And then Kamsa says to him, "So, my dear friend, it seems both your brother and sister have been defeated by a mere child. This does not bode well for your family reputation." And then he laughed sarcastically. So he's really goading him on, isn't he? So this associate's name is Agha, as we know. Agha looked into Kamsa's cold eyes and replied, "Before the sun sets tomorrow night, the whole community of cow herders will become the walking dead. They will wander the pasturing grounds, piteously calling out the names of their children, whom they will never see again." Agha's breath came out like the hiss of snakes as he continued, "They will be lifeless because that wretched child Krishna, who has caused all this trouble, he will be dead." The threat behind the words was palpable, and all who heard them shuddered. So even these hardened associates of Kamsa shuddered at the malice behind these words. Agha turned and he walked out of that assembly of ghastly men. The next morning in Vrindavan, Krishna rose early and excitedly ran into the courtyard, blowing his buffalo horn to awaken all his cowherd friends. From every house in Vrindavan could be heard the excited words, "Mother, I must hurry! Krishna is calling me and all of our friends to come and play." The mothers busily attended to their sons' dressing and decorating them with ornaments of pearls and gold, and preparing their lunches. The boys impatiently ran out of their homes, carrying their favourite foods wrapped in cloth bundles. Some tied them on the ends of their cowherd sticks, and others fastened them onto their belts. The boys stood together in front of Nanda Maharaja's house and called out, "Come out, Krishna! We're here, waiting to play with you. Or are you staying home with your mother today?" So they were goading Krishna on in a wonderful way. Krishna eagerly stepped outside, and all the boys cheered him loudly, and off they set, merrily laughing. All the ladies of Vrindavan anxiously watched as the young boys collected their herd of calves and ran into the forest on the edge of the village. Picking fruits, green leaves, bunches of flowers and peacock feathers, as well as mixing the red minerals from the soil, they all began decorating themselves as forest boys and playing together. So their mothers had dressed them, with pearls and gold jewellery. And here they were, as soon as they get out of sight of their mothers, they're getting the clay and they're putting feathers in their hair and laughing away because they look like forest boys now. Some of the boys blew their flutes or bugles. Some imitated the buzzing sound of the bumblebees, and others imitated the voice of the cuckoo. Such loud, fun-filled sounds echoed through the forest. When you get a bunch of little boys playing, it's always loud. Some of the boys imitated flying birds by running after the birds' shadows on the ground. Other boys imitated the graceful movements of the swans, while some pretended to be peacocks with tails of leaves spread out behind them. In this way, all the boys and Krishna enjoyed life in the forest. But stalking behind a thick grove of trees was Agha. He had made himself invisible while he watched and spied upon the boys and all their games and their boisterous playing. This was driving him crazy. He hated to see them having so much fun. He especially scrutinized their leader, Krishna, until he could not tolerate watching for a moment longer. Agha then magically transformed into a python, and using the mystical yogic art of Mahima, he expanded into a gigantic reptile. Agha's body was now as high as a mountain and 8 miles long. His iridescent scales glistened like a rainbow, but tattooed markings crisscrossed his snake body in evil ways. So he didn't even look beautiful, he just looked evil. He lay on the road and opened his mouth wide like a cave. So large was he that while his lower lip touched the surface of the road, his upper lip touched the clouds above. The borders of his mouth resembled the sides of a big cave in which the inside was dark and foreboding. Agha's tongue resembled a broad road entering into that darkness. Satisfied with his deadly form, Agha waited now for his prey. Soon the cowherd boys arrived there. Upon seeing the huge snake, some of the boys were unafraid and thought it must be a statue made for them to play on. They called out, "It's not possible that this could be a real python." And then they began to talk amongst themselves. Is it dead? Or is it actually a living snake trying to devour us? Deciding it was alive, one cowherd boy said, "Dear friends, this is certainly an animal sitting there ready to swallow us up. Its teeth are like mountain peaks, and there is a hot wind blowing out of its cave-like mouth." Another boy said, "Oh yes, just smell that terrible stench coming out of its mouth. It smells like burning flesh. He must have eaten many bodies to make it stink that horribly." Then some boys declared, "This creature has come to swallow us up, but he will be killed just like Aghasura was." Funny how they mention Aghasura, who's the brother. Filled with love and confidence in their friend Krishna, the cowherd boys clapped their hands and began marching into the mouth of the frightful python. So they didn't even go attentively, send a scout in first and then report back to them. They just clapped their hands and they marched straight in. They were fearless. They were that confident in Krishna. All the calves gladly followed as well. So even the calves had that confidence in Krishna. They looked as if they were going to a party instead of into what seemed to be the jaws of death. Aghasura, however, did not close his mouth, but he waited patiently for Krishna to enter. Krishna had overheard his friends talking. However, before he could forbid them from entering this demon's mouth, they'd already paraded happily inside. Just like straws enter into a fire, his friends and calves had entered into the abdomen of Aghasura. Krishna was momentarily struck with wonder at this sight. Deciding that he must simultaneously save his friends and kill this demon, Krishna now also entered the mouth of Agha. So this is it. This is what Aghasura had been waiting for. Hiding in the clouds above and watching all these wondrous events were the demigods. When Krishna walked into the snake's mouth, they exclaimed loudly, "Alas, alas!" But Agha's friends, who were mystically aware of these events, were very jubilant and roared with approval. So they're on the side of Aghasura, and the demigods, they're very worried. You see, they don't have that confidence that the cowherd boys had. When Krishna heard the lamenting cries of the demigods, he immediately began enlarging himself within the demon's throat. Aghasura also began to expand his body to an extraordinary size. So Krishna's getting bigger and bigger, and Aghasura is getting bigger and bigger because he has that mystic ability. But it came to a point he could not expand any further. Krishna is unlimited how much he could expand, but not Agha. And it came to a point, Agha's eyes rolled violently as his breathing stopped and he was suffocated. Because Krishna was blocking the snake's mouth, the demon's life air could not pass out of any hole in the body, and therefore it finally burst out through the top of his head. The soul came out like a dazzling light and illuminated all directions. The soul appeared above the corpse of the python and momentarily hovered there and waited. Meanwhile, Krishna cast his transcendental glance over the cowherd boys and calves who lay in the python's stomach. They were all asleep. And he immediately brought them back to consciousness. The cowherd boys sat up, they rubbed their eyes, they stood up, the little calves stood up, and they all very cheerfully ran out into the sunshine. As Krishna left the body of Aghasura, so he waited for all the cowherd boys and calves to leave, and he was the last one to leave. And as he left the body of Aghasura, the effulgent soul that had been waiting above entered Krishna's body. Even though Agha was a demon, because Krishna had entered into his body and stayed there momentarily, Aghasura had become purified of all his sinful activities. So just the touch of Krishna, let alone Krishna enters into his body. Krishna awarded Agha liberation of merging into the Brahman effulgence, and then Agha went to the spiritual planets known as Vaikuntha Loka. All of this took place by the unfathomable mercy of Krishna. All the demigods who had been observing this showered down flowers upon Krishna. This was cause for celebration. Celestial girls began dancing. Heavenly singers offered beautiful songs. Drummers beat their kettle drums. And in this way they began glorifying Krishna. Everyone was happy. Everyone except the demons who were aware of what had happened. The python's mouth remained open, and after some time the large body dried up, and it became a wonderful playground for the cowherd boys. They immediately saw it turn everything into a game. Remember when I was talking about Pin the Tail on the Donkey? This is transcendental games, isn't it? So the cowherd boys saw this as a wonderful playground for them. And, the python's body was all twisting and turning like that. And this was a great place to, slip and slide down and climb up. And there were little hiding places in there. And the mouth became like a big cave for them, but it was filled with sunshine. And so it was a wonderful place for the cowherd boys to play. So, they had Govardhan Hill with all its caves and little streams, and they would play all over Govardhan Hill. And now here's another playground for them. So the whole pastime turned out to be this wonderful event for all the devotees. And we can really think about how confident those cowherd boys and the calves were, even though they were running like blindfolded into this darkness. They never stumbled and fell away, did they? Namaste.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hari Bol, Jai Radha Shyam,
Krishna,
Jai Lord Chaitanya, Gauranga.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hari Bol.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hari Bol.
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare. Hari Bol. Louder, louder.
Hare Rama,
Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Jai Radha Shyam. Hare Nama.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Krishna. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvayakacharya Satya Shishiman Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Kori Vaishnavinam ki jai. Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadeva Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Namacharya Shila Hairas Thakur ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Nitai Gaura's World Mission ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Vrindavan Dham ki jai.